I wanted to talk a little bit about what I refer to when I'm talking about primary, secondary and tertiary characters in spices, which you may hear me kind of talk about as I go through some of the instructional videos. So the benefit of understanding primary, secondary and tertiary character, or even just primary and secondary, or the aromatic profiling of spices, is that it helps you to be able to freeform a little bit. So the way that I teach is generally to give my students really quite specific flavour references so they can start to build their own flavour library around certain spices, but also to teach a little bit about what those terms mean. So if you're home and you've got a spice you're not quite sure what to do with, just raw tasting it and being able to identify a little bit of its aroma and a little bit of its shape character will help you to be able to use it, one, in a free-form way, but two, to sort of understand why you're using it in particular dishes, which is what enhances your culinary self-education, basically. So I'm going to start with a little triplicate here. So cumin seed, turmeric and Kashmiri chilli. And I'll start with the cumin seed because it is so familiar to so many cultures, accessible to so many people, and it's generally in everyone's pantry. So when you start with flavour identification, it needs to be raw tasting. Your mouth doesn't have to be particularly clean, you know, don't worry about that too much. Okay, just to start, what you're looking for with primary aroma is the first experience of taste when the spice hits your mouth. Generally, primary aroma or primary character will equate with the aromatic, the obvious aromatic profiles in the spice. So primary characters generally are aligned with the smell of your produce or your spice or your ingredients. So for cumin seed, it's very earthy, you know, nutty, that woody, nutty smell is the primary character. Secondary characters are a little bit different. So secondary characters are quite often flavour indicators or taste indicators that we might not associate with food. So a taste indicator that might not be associated with food, if the smell is nutty, the secondary character might be earthy, you know, stick-like. It has a eucalypt element in there as well. So eucalypt is in sort of gum tree. So quite often secondary characters are the flavours that will come through after the primary aroma has passed, and they're not necessarily food related terms. That's why when you hear people describing wine, they'll say things like cigar smoke or you know, like flint or oyster shell, or characters that you don't associate with that type of a food coming through. That's your secondary character. Tertiary character is a little more esoteric, and I think the easiest way to explain tertiary character when it comes to food is tertiary character refers to sort of shape, and that's the hardest thing to be able to work with when you have a new palate. But in a musical space, in a musical capacity, your primary characters is the voice of the vocalist. Your secondary character is the drum beat, and your tertiary character is the tempo of the song. So song tempo is almost like that invisible quality that sits at the back of the song but frames everything, and that's how tertiary characters work with spice and aroma. So if I move over to turmeric powder, primary character, it's gingery and orangey. Secondary characters are, becomes earthy, and there's an oil-like quality and a powdery texture to it. And then the tertiary character is its structure, so is the feeling of the structure in the mouth. So it has a spinal length and a foundational weight, and that's what quite often bitter spice will have that. So it's a supporting category spice. When it comes to Kashmiri chilli, primary character, smoke. Smoky sweetness, secondary character coming through is floral, heat, and the tertiary character is space. So it creates a sensation of space and upward movement, and chili will do that too. So once I understand primary, secondary and tertiary quality, and I start to get a feel for how to relate to that when I'm tasting raw spice, it starts to become much easier to blend your spices, because you can add up those elements to equate with familiar tastes. So, nuttiness, gingery quality, smoke and sweetness. So if I imagine, you know, nutty, gingery, smoky, sweet flavors, I know just from saying that there's a cohesion and a sense of deliciousness to that little blend. And so I can then use those together with confidence, knowing that they're not going to sort of contrast too loudly or create too much of a cacophony when they're being used together. I detail all of those notes in this spice companion, and so if you did want to go further, this is a good option. So this book is about detailing what spice holds, so that you can sort of get into that raw spice and start to be able to create your own masala blends by understanding the flavour categories, the primary, secondary and tertiary aromas, and why they matter and how they coalesce. So, yeah. But just understanding that much about spice, just understanding that when you taste something, the primary character is aligned with its aromatic quality. The secondary character is aligned with the tastes that come forward after that aromatic quality has passed, and the tertiary character of the spice aligns with the general sort of emotive feel and shape that supports that spice expression and frames that for you. It's a little bit of a sophisticated way of thinking about flavour, but conversely, if you become familiar with that sense of sophistication, it simplifies the cooking process. And so a little bit of time investing, if you're interested in learning and understanding how spice frames that way, will make your cooking journey more playful, more flexible, your food more delicious. And it's really how I've found my pleasure in coming home to these, you know, familiar parts of my family and my culture and myself.